We're about to see the biggest escalation of the war in Ukraine so far, Michael Snyder reports. We're getting dangerously close to the point of no return. For months, both sides have been continuously escalating the war in Ukraine, and now it appears that we're on the verge of the biggest escalation of them all. As I've been repeatedly warning my readers for weeks, the Russians have been gathering hundreds of thousands of fresh troops for a massive winter offensive. The exhausted Ukrainian forces are already stretched incredibly thin, and the losses that they have been suffering over the past couple of months have been nothing short of catastrophic. If the Russians decide to bring the hammer down, the Ukrainians will be in very serious trouble. Of course, this is completely contrary to the propaganda that we have been fed for months. We've been told over and over again that the Ukrainians are winning, but that was just a bunch of nonsense. Now reality is settling in, and the Ukrainians are openly warning that Russia is preparing for maximum escalation. According to Ukrainians, Russia is preparing to launch a major new offensive against Ukraine in the coming weeks, a top Ukrainian security official said, adding to mounting concerns in Kiev, which is the Ukrainian capital as we know, and the West, that the Kremlin is preparing a renewed push to seize large areas in the country. Russia is preparing for maximum escalation, said Oleksiy Danilov, the Secretary of Ukraine National Security and Defense Council, in an interview with Sky News published online early Wednesday local time. It's gathering everything possible, doing drills and training, he said. Yes, if the Russians send hundreds of thousands of fresh troops pouring into Ukraine, it will definitely be considered an enormous escalation of the conflict. Another Ukrainian official is claiming that the Russians have gathered a total of 500,000 troops for the coming offensive. Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov told French media on Wednesday that Russia had 500,000 troops ready for an attack in coming weeks, and that number is far higher than the 300,000 newly enlisted soldiers Russian President Vladimir Putin called up this past autumn. Officially, they announced 300,000, but when we see the troops at the borders, according to our assessments, it's much more, Reznikov said. If that number is accurate, this Russian force is much, much larger than the force that originally invaded Ukraine. In other words, it looks like the Russians have decided that it's time to stop messing around. According to Reznikov, the Ukrainians are anticipating that the Russians will attack from the east and the south. He said Russia was likely to try an offensive in two fronts, in the country's east, which has been at the center of brutal fighting in recent months, and in the south. That assessment may indeed turn out to be accurate, but I think that the best move for the Russians would be to bring down a hammer blow from the north, that is from Belarus, which is just above, has borders just above Kiev, as we know. In any event, once the Russians commit hundreds of thousands of new troops to the war, there will inevitably be a response. There will be a response by the Western powers. So what will that response be? Well, former UK Defence Minister Sir Gerald Howard says that it may become necessary to send NATO troops into Ukraine. Of course, if that happens, we will have NATO troops and Russia troops directly firing at one another. And once we get to that stage, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away from a nuclear war. The Russians understand this very well, and Russian President Vladimir Putin just threatened us with nuclear weapons once again. He said, "Those who draw European countries, including Germany, into a new war with Russia and expect to win a victory over Russia on the battlefield apparently don't understand that a modern war with Russia will be quite different for them," he said. "We don't send our tanks to their borders, and we have the means to respond, and it won't end with the use of armored vehicles. Everyone must understand that," Putin said. Now, here in the Western world, that the experts keep assuring us that the risk of nuclear war is very low, but on Russian television, nuclear war has become a central theme. In fact, just the other day, a video that simulated a Poseidon doomsday weapon being used against the UK was broadcast to a nationwide audience. Russian state TV have broadcast a mock video of the UK being obliterated by a tsunami set off by a nuclear missile sent from Moscow. The sick footage shows a Russian state anchor revealing that as the missile plummets into the North Atlantic Ocean, sparking a giant tidal wave that engulfs both Ireland and the UK. We need to try to find a peaceful way out of this mess while we still can, because once the first nuke is used, there will be no going back. Meanwhile, we just continue to get even closer to war with China. Just days after a top U.S. military official warned that the United States should be prepared for a war with China over Taiwan in 2025, Beijing on Wednesday conducted the largest incursion of Taiwanese airspace in weeks. Taiwan's Minister of Defense, National Defense, reported that 34 Chinese military aircraft along with 9 naval vessels were detected near the self-governed island at around 3 a.m. local time. And the North Koreans are warning that recent actions by the U.S. have pushed matters on the Korean peninsula to an extreme red line. So on top of everything else, we have reached a point where a full-blown war between Israel and Iran could literally start at any moment. When the missiles start firing, the elite will run off to their doomsday bunkers. Where will we go? You might want to start thinking about that. As I discuss in my book, in my latest book, if you live anywhere near a nuclear missile silo or military base, I would highly suggest relocating. Leaders all over the globe seem to be catching war fever, and eventually somebody's going to push things too far. We truly are in a collision course with destiny, and right now, those that are running things have absolutely no intention of changing direction. This finally here, Michael's new book entitled End Times, now available in paperback and for the Kindle on Amazon. This is written by Michael Snyder. He says, about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the Most Important News, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, and I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is by Michael Snyder on End of the American Dream. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box